Hi everyone, my name is Nuria and this is my sewing journey. And for today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this blouse. Second video out of the series where I show you how to change your basic top pattern into creating your own designs. And with this blouse, we're going to discover how to do a hard neckline and also how to create all these gathers in here. It is going to be very simple, you'll see. You absolutely don't need previous experience. I'm going to be there with you through all the steps. So we're going to draft the pattern, then we're going to cut into the fabric, we're going to put the pieces together, and then finally, I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks on how you can change this design. And that's it. Let's get into it. Let's talk about materials you're going to need. We're going to start with the most important one, and this is the basic top pattern. If you don't have it by now, you should have it. I'm going to link a video down below or up, I don't know where. So you go and create your basic top pattern. If you have your own and it's not the same as mine, it should also be fine. After that, we're going to need some paper. If you don't have this big one, you can always use the normal paper and then some tape. Some scissors to cut the paper, a pencil, of course, and then some rulers. It is good to have, but it's not super needed that you use this one. I don't know if you see it, it's very transparent. But this shape here, it's not 100% that you have it, you can do it by hand, it's just handy. And then for this ruler, it's always nice to have one ruler with a 90-degree angle because you're going to need it. Apart from this, you're going to need your fabric, pre-wash it. For this pattern, I used cotton, but I would advise you to use something a bit more drapey because otherwise it's very stiff. And a meter of it should be fine. Then it's very handy to have one of those pencils that it disappears when you iron on them. Then your scissors to cut fabric and never cut paper. Then some thread, some needles to attach the pieces together. I like to have normal sewing needles because I do some finishes by hand. And then onto the big machines, you're going to need the iron. It's a must, you need it, okay? You need it. You're going to need a sewing machine and then optional, serger. So that is everything. Let's get into drafting. The first thing we have to do is convert this pattern into a dartless pattern. Starting with the back, draw a line from the tip of the shoulder dart to the armhole notch. Do the same for the front pattern. Now, cut through that line and also cut through the shoulder darts. We will transfer the shoulder darts to the armhole. Once that's done, redraw the armhole and the shoulder if needed. And there you have it, the dartless block. Now that we have the main structure, we're going to start by defining the neckline. Because it's going to be gathered, you can make it as big as you want, both front and back. And a bit for reference, mine is about 10 centimeters from the base of my neck. After that, we can start creating the gathers. What we're going to do is divide our blouse into different sections. If you add more sections, you're going to have in the end more volume, and if you add less, you're going to have less volume. All those gathers, we want them on the neckline. So what we're going to do is separate all those sections. Again, the more you separate them, the more volume you're going to add. In my design, I separated them around 2 centimeters each. After that, we're going to see that all our curves are going to be a bit weird, so we'll have to redraw our structure. One last thing is that this design takes into account that it's cut on the waistline, so if you want to make it longer, you can just elongate it on the bottom. For reference, my blouse is 10 centimeters longer. Let's draw the sleeve. We're going to start by marking 0 at the top of the paper. We'll measure down 1/3 of the armhole measurement and mark 0.1. From 0, we'll also add the sleeve length down and mark 0.2. From 0.1, we'll add bicep divided by 2 plus 4 centimeters to both sides. They will be 0.3 to the left and 4 to the right. Connect 0.0 and 3 and 0.0 and 4. The left side corresponds to the back. We'll divide that line into fourths and add the numbers 5, 6 and 7. Moving to the front, so the right side, we'll measure from 0.4 halfway between 0 and 4 minus 1.8 centimeters and we'll mark 0.8. Then we'll divide both sides halfway and mark 0.9 to the left and 10 to the right. Now draw a curve that goes from 0.3 to 0.5 centimeters below 0.5, crosses 0.6, goes 2 centimeters outside of 0.7, across 0.0, 2 centimeters above 0.9, across 0.8, 1.5 centimeters below 0.10, and ends in 0.4. To close off the sleeve, we'll measure from 0.2 wrist circumference plus 6.5 centimeter to the right and to the left, and we will connect the sleeve. This sleeve is meant to be a short sleeve, so it's the simplest design you can get. If you plan on making it long, I would add maybe an elbow dart or make a prototype first to make sure that the length is the appropriate one. We have to make sure that the sleeve is going to fit on the armhole and that it's centered. Measure for both front and back where the notches would be. After that, mark where the shoulder seam is situated. You'll see there's some extra fabric on the sleeve, which will give it a round shape. Measure the ease between shoulder seams and mark where the new middle would be. That's the center of your sleeve. Now that you have the main structure of the sleeve, you can shorten it as much as you want. For example, in my design, it's around 22 centimeters. And once you're happy with your length, you can start adding volume if that's what you want. We're going to separate it into little sections. The more sections, the more volume you're going to have in your sleeve. After that, we're going to separate those sections depending on how much volume we want again. For example, in my design, I separated them around 2 centimeters between each other, but the more you separate them, the more volume you will add. And once that's done, you can redraw your sleeve and you'll be able to choose if you want a normal sleeve or a sleeve with volume. And we're done. We can now add seam allowances. We're going to have both front and back. We're going to also add the front and back facing, and we're going to have 2 sleeves. All the seam allowances are going to be 1 centimeter. If you don't feel confident enough, then you can make them 1.5 or 2 centimeters. And for the bottom part of the blouse and the sleeve, you're gonna have more centimeters. For me, for example, was 2 centimeters. It's time to assemble the pieces. So we're going to have front and back, 2 sleeves, and then front and back facing. The first thing you have to make sure of is that all the notches are marked, and you can even cut a little bit on the fabric to make sure that they are 100% marked. If you're interested in overlocking because your fabric frays, for example, what you can now do is overlock all the shoulder seams and all the side seams for front and back, for the facings, and for the sleeves you can add an overlocked hem on the side. What we're going to do is attach right sides together, and then we're going to sew across this line, and then we're going to put those together and sew along the shoulder line. The same thing for the facing. The only thing is that we will only have to attach the shoulder seams. So this one and this one. We will do that. We will iron flat all the seams and we'll come back. The main structure and the facing are done, and now what we're going to do is turn it around and we'll have to mark where our cord channel is going to be. So for this pattern I did 2 centimeters. If you want to do it differently, go ahead, but this is what we're going to do. Also, we're going to mark where the eyelets are going to be. Once that's done, I'm going to show you how to create the eyelets. We have to take into account that there's 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then we need to add 2 centimeters afterwards. So then it's 3 centimeters from here. And what we're going to do is just measure that distance. This one is in scale, so I cannot do it 100%, but let's say it's here. And then you're going to follow all the way like this. And the channel is going to be 1 centimeter wide. So we're going to mark this all the way also to the back. And then we know that the eyelets are going to be at the center, so I'm going to mark 1 here and 1 here. Now let's get into how to create the eyelets. We have 2 versions of eyelets. We have these ones that comes with 2 pieces, and then you'll have to smash it with a hammer. or by hand, that is the one I'm going to show you. So we're gonna get our piece of fabric. In our case, it's going to be here in the middle, and we're going to mark a circle. Once we have the circle, we're going to get our needle with some thread. And from behind, we're going to go around this circle. Once that's done, we're going to cut a hole in here. And we're going to use something to make the hole the size of our circle. So for example, with this pen, I would go and I would go around to make it bigger. So now what we're going to do is go around in and out of the circle, like this, getting all this excess inside. I cannot see very well, so I don't know how I'm doing it. And you continue all the way around until the eyelet is done and you have a hole inside. Now that the holes are done, what we're going to do is attach the sleeves. First, we're going to do 2 basting stitches, separated ½ centimeter from the edge and then 1 centimeter from each other, and they are going to go from knot to knot. And do not do a back stitch, so only go all the way around. I'm going to make sure that I have a straight stitch here and that I'm going to put it at the maximum stitch length here. This is how it looks like, and we're going to leave all these threads loose. Now we're going to put right sides together and we're going to sew along the side seam with a normal stitch. This is how it should look like. You see that I also press the seams open. And what we're going to do is turn it on the right side. So the right side is facing you. We're going to get this piece and we're going to turn it so the right sides are facing each other. After that, we're going to see where the notches are. So the front has 2 notches and the back has only 1 notch. And this one has 1 notch here and 2 notches here. So I know that this sleeve goes on this side. And we're going to make sure that all the notches are in the correct position, like this. So the back notch, the front notch, the middle notch on the shoulder seam, and then the side seam. Once we have that, we're going to get these threads here on one side, and we're going to pull until the length of the sleeve is the same length as this part of the armhole. We can do that by pulling a little bit, and then we can secure it going around the needle. We make sure that all these gathers are distributed in a way that they are not going to be noticed, and then we're going to secure it with more pins. Once this has been done for both sides, we can add a normal stitch with the seam allowance that we added for the sleeve. This is how it looks like now. The next step is attaching the facing. So we're going to put this one right sides and we're going to match right side to right side. So we're going to put it over like this and then pin it. Now that it's all pinned, we're going to add a top stitch and then we're going to press the seams like this. Done sewing. And now what we're going to have to do is, you see these pieces here that are round, it's good if you snip it a little bit, because otherwise it will create some wrinkles on the other side when you fold it back. And then here, on this pointy place, what we're going to do is cut as close as we can to the edge, but not through it. And now we're ready to turn it around. Now the piece has been turned around, and what we have left to do is add a top stitch over this channel line, all the way front and back for both lines. And once we're done, we come back. Before we talk about the finishes, let's talk about the cord that will go through the channel. So we have 3 options. This one is the typical cord that you can buy in your fabric store, or you can also use any yarn of some kind. The second thing is the bias tape. This is kind of what we did for blouse number 1. And what you can do, bias tape is something that opens and it's separated into fourths. And what you can do is just fold it and then fold it in the middle and add a top stitch here. I like to use bias tape when the cord is too small, because if it's less than 1 centimeter, it's very difficult to create, and I normally go for bias tape. The third method is using your own fabric, and there are multiple ways on how you can turn it around. You can use these kind of tools. There are other tools also that I don't have here, but the simplest one is adding a strap of yarn, for example, and then putting right sides together and sewing along here and here, making sure that the yarn is attached. So let's go. This is how it should look like. And then what we're going to do is trim a little bit these edges here. And it's as simple as pulling from this side. And then the beginning is a bit tricky, but once it's in, it's easier. The bigger the cord and the lightest the fabric is, the easiest it is to turn around. So see, it's already here. And I can turn it all the way around. We would press it flat. We would get rid of this piece of yarn, and we would have the cord. This is what it should look like. And then with the help of a needle or with something like this, you can just get your cord, attach it, and then put it through the hole and start pulling all the way until you find it on the other side. But now for the finishes. How it looks like inside. We made our channel, but then we have this piece here open. In this case, I would finish it by hand because I don't want any traces of a top stitch on the right side. So what I would do would be folding it inwards 1 centimeter or half a centimeter, as much as I have. I would run an invisible stitch by hand all the way around. And as for the finishes at the bottom of the sleeves and at the bottom of the garment, what you can do, you have two options. So you have this here. Option 1 would be overlocking all around and then folding it once and adding a top stitch. But if you don't have an overlock or you don't like when the seams are seen, what you can do is fold it once, then fold it over it twice, and then running the top stitch. So then it will be hidden, like we did here. We're finally done with the blouse and it's time for the tips and tricks. So different things that we can change with this design. In here, between the hem and the channel, I left 2 centimeters. So this you can change however you want. In this other piece, for example, this was only 1 centimeter. I have to say I like it more with 1 centimeter because 2 centimeters, it's a bit, it gives me the feeling that I'm going to, I don't know, baptism or something. That's the feeling I have. With this design also, it's very important if you change the fabric, it's going to give you a very different result. So this one is very stiff, and you can see here with this sleeve that it's like a bell. But in this one, the draping is a little bit better. One last thing is that you can change the hems. You can always do that in any design. I have more information on that in the first video out of this series. And the other thing is that you can create whatever type of sleeve you want. You can do a long sleeve, or you can do a short sleeve, or you can do a short sleeve with some volume like I did in here. You can decide whichever one you prefer. That is everything for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you share with me if you make this blouse. My Instagram is _Nuriamo. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed yet, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.